Hi guys, welcome to this next session of the NAGB's Digital Summer Camp. I think it's probably best if we start with some introductions. So I'm Natalie.
I'm Zearier.
I'm the assistant curator here, and
I am the community outreach officer.
yes, and she's just a generally awesome human. So anyway, so I guess we should give a quick introduction to what today's session is going to be about.
Okay, so this is the artist activism session. It's headed by both of us.
Yes.
And Nadi's going to tell you a bit about that.
So we thought it would be a really appropriate session to have given recent global events, but also given the history of art as being very much involved in, drawing awareness to what's happening in the world, injustices in the world. Art is a way of processing, I guess, the things that we go through in our everyday lives, some of which are lovely, but also some of which are not so great. Artists have, for a very long time, used art as a tool to, try and engage community activism and try to engage people being able to speak up for what's right. Because art, I think, is supposed to be a space where the voiceless can have a voice.
It's also important to remember that the sustainability theme is not just environmentalism. So social justice issues are closely tied to environmental issues, and what we find more often than not is when you try to fix an environmental issue, there's always a social issue there that also needs to be fixed. So the fact that artists can be used as a tool to bring attention to both the environment and social justice issues is amazing, and something that definitely we'd love to talk to you about today.
Yep, it's all part of the family.
Yep. So we hope you enjoy.
Yes.
The order of the video today, so the first thing we're going to do is do a little presentation on artist activism, where we can talk about the different components, and then Natalie's going to take you through the really awesome activity we have planned based on work of Kara Walker.
Yes.
And then that'll be it. And of course, at any point in this video, please ask questions.
Yes.
We will be here live to respond to them. Yeah.
Yep. All right, we got you.
Have fun.
Hello, everybody.
All right. Hey.
And my name is Zearier, and I'm joined by
I'm Natalie.
the incomparable Natalie Willis.
Oh, girl, stop. She just flattered me, child.
Okay, and we are here to talk about art and activism today.
So a lot of people kind of wonder why art and activism are linked, which really, if you look at the sort of wider art history, things beyond I want to paint something nice for my house, art and activism have kind of always been tied together, right? So art at its core is about culture and people, and since there's always been people dealing with struggles, right, whether it's poverty, war, or social injustices and oppression, it's just natural that some artworks would reflect this. So activist art is a term that's used to describe art that's grounded in the act of doing. So whether it's an engagement in space or something physical that you're doing, it's you're making something happen, and that something that's happening is addressing a political or social issue. So it's it's really, really, really the word is activist, right? It's it's about action. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Amazing. So what we have here on the slide is artist activism using your voice, and your is in all caps. I really should have bolded that as well, because if you're going to take this route and you're going to create art as a form of activism, it really is. It really does have to be your voice. It has to be your perspective. And I think it's always best to speak from things that you understand, that you live, that you experience, because then you have a unique perspective on that issue that no one else would have. And I think artists need to have a unique perspective on the things that they create. And when I
and a good word for that as well, just for a sidebar, the word for that is your personal subjectivity.
Thank you. I just
you
learned
as
a
a
new term
person
today. That's great.
So you as a subject, you have your own subjectivities and different subjects that affect you and your particular life. So it's your subjectivity. It's what you're, what you kind of are leaning towards, what you're biased towards. And bias isn't always a bad thing. It's just literally it's how you live in the world. So if people know your subjectivities, this is as the opposite to objective, right? So if people know your subjectivities, then they know how to be objective about what you're saying.
That's a very good distinction. Thank you for that.
Sorry, just wanted to drop that in there.
No, that's good. Drop away. So we just have a cute couple of examples on here. We tried to find popular examples, and so when I think of activism art, I sort of think of them in three broad categories. Sort of protest art in general tend to evoke strong emotions for me. Like it tends to be sort of jarring. Like it forces you to pay attention. And there are a lot of examples of that, like Misafa, the Muslim artist.
And also thinking about like all the stuff that we would have seen on the news and online with the Black Lives Matter protests that have been going on. So like it's very timely, y'all.
Absolutely. When you have something to be said and you need some people to pay attention, like you want it to, you kind of have to shock them into paying attention sometimes.
Right.
And that's
you make them listen.
Yes. And art is a great tool for doing that.
It is indeed.
There are also environmental justice art and social justice art. And Banksy, of course, is one that everybody knows. It's
so
famous,
popular.
I know, right? Famous for no one knowing who he really is, right? Because he does tackle a lot of controversial issues like war. So you understand his need for wanting to be held confidential in private. And then artists like Alejandro Duran, who literally use found materials and create installations in nature. And so the image you see here is of a whole lot of toothbrushes. So everything you see there are toothbrushes pulled from the ocean.
Oh my God.
Actually. And he created an installation in nature on that. And so I guess just seeing it and seeing the sheer scale of the work that they create is like, is this really what we're doing? And that's really what it is. And that brings us to the why, right? Why do they take the time to create these elaborate, intricate pieces of artwork? And honestly, the answer is it's because they have to. And they have
exactly.
They have to, because you need to make a point, spread a message, to start a discussion, to inspire action. Natalie started off by saying that really activism is about action. It's about inspiring, creating policy to create action around a specific issue.
And awareness.
Awareness, yes. Action and awareness around an issue. And sometimes if that just means getting people talking about things that they weren't talking before, like we saw with the Black Lives Matter movement, people for the first time saying, oh, what is systematic racism again?
Exactly.
Just
It's like, this thing that doesn't affect me, that I would never know about. I'm not aware of this. Oh, snap, word? Black people really getting killed by the police? My bad.
Yeah.
So like now everybody knows. You know, they've been forced to listen.
The discussion has to be had, right? Because now it's so blatant and in your face. And they're making a point, and the point there is we need to live. And we want to inspire action, which is policy change. And that's the case whether you're doing social justice issues, environmental issues, whether you're whatever it is.
Exactly.
So the why is important, because art is an important tool for everything in life, and especially in activism, because it cannot be understated.
And there's also like another and there's like another saying a lot of times as well, and it's like I think it's important to remember that, like, you know, as much as we make work for ourselves because it feels good to make work, once you put it out into the public realm, it's like, you know, the personal is political. That's the sort of saying. So like what you're putting out is like, you know, you're putting it out to be you know, considered and digested by other people. So it's like you're literally putting it out because you want to have a discussion with people, not because you want them to tell you that it looks good. It's because y'all want to talk, you know?
Yeah. Sidebar, a little bit of a sidebar here, but I have heard before, and I'm going to ask you from your perspective as an artist and a curator, Natalie, that there are some people who are afraid to put art out that may be a little controversial or be related to or can be connected to a controversial topic, because when an artist puts work out there, you there's no guarantee how people are going to interpret that. Sometimes what the artist's intention isn't always how people read it. What would you tell someone who's afraid of putting something out there only to have that message misinterpreted?
I think the key to a lot of that is like you have to make sure you have conversations with lots of different people about the work before you like put it out. So it's like you almost take like a halfway step. And like also, I mean, again, like let's be real about it. Like if you're making something and you want it to have a reaction, like you're gonna get a reaction, right? Like you're putting it out because you want a reaction from people. Sometimes the reaction's good, sometimes it's bad. You can't control it. But what you can control is like what you know that people are getting from it in a certain sense, from like your own like small, like almost like a test group. And I think that, yeah, it's just really, you know, if you have something to say and you know that you've been hearing a lot of negativity, whether it's about something that's like in your own life, right? Like queer people every day, right? Queer LGBT community people every day hear about how they're not supposed to exist and how like this is wrong or whatever. If queer people weren't like making work about, you know, the struggle, the homophobia that they have to deal with all the time, that's of course going to be controversial to a lot of people because it is, as Zearier said earlier, systemic, right? It's built into the fabric of like how the world works. People don't like to sort of shake up what they think they already know. So like you have to be a little bit brave, and your bravery can look like different things. It doesn't even have to be loud all the time. You know what I mean? It's like you take your little steps every single time and you get a little bit louder and a little bit louder, and you find like, what I find really important is like you find your group of people. So like you find like almost like a collective of like other artists who are dealing with this stuff, because then you feel less alone. You know that you're not the only person doing this. Absolutely. Because like if you know you're not the only voice having to represent this, you don't have to be the ambassador. You're just part of a group, you know? And it can be really helpful.
I just want to tell y'all, we did not plan this. I completely put her on the spot just now because it came to my mind, and she just gave me a flawless answer. So,
man, Zearier, like honestly, pay this woman as your hype woman, because my God, she just make me feel so good by myself. See, this is community.
I don't have to
so y'all guys know.
I don't even have to try. It's amazing. Okay,
Zearier is my community.
So
she is.
Oh my God. All right.
So, I know this is just like a big old fangirl sesh, but anyway, let's get this.
They're gonna listen to this. Have fun.
I know. I love it.
So the how. So we just want to make note here that you're not limited. Like it's not like you have to be able to paint, or you have to be able to like have fine detailing. It's be able to craft a sculpture like you know the last of the gods.
Exactly, like making like a friggin' like Michelangelo, like you know, like you don't have to do that.
But there
it's
are
lovely.
a lot of
I mean, if you could, like,
if you can,
good, but
absolutely,
like, you know.
please share that talent with the world.
But it's not the only way.
Exactly. All of us have different talents. There's even a welder that we work with frequently. He doesn't even consider himself an artist, which is terrible because welding is an art.
He is.
Anything can be an art, right?
Tyrone Ferguson, by the way, guys.
Yes. Carpentry can be an art. Welding can be an art.
And it is.
And they are. So, I mean, you have so many options available to you. And a lot of the artists that work in this work in the photography and installation and found object sort of realm. So the more creative you can be with it, the better your point gets across.
Right. And I'm also going to say something that I think is like something that people don't think about is like, all right, a lot of people think that like if you're going to do activist work that it can like, you know, only be like Banksy style. You're going to do a mural somewhere and then everybody's going to see it, even though you're going to like risk like getting like called by the police because you're defacing a building, right?
Oh yeah, please.
And it's like,
children, don't break the law, please.
No.
Vandalism is wrong. Moving on.
Right? You know, please see the sincerity in our voices. No, seriously, like please don't like, you know, don't get in no trouble. But
right, definitely.
If you want to find like ways to get that same thing visually up and then like people can see it, as like I've seen people who've like projected an image onto a building like in the evening when they know that everybody's out having a drink. You know what I mean? So it's like there's all these different ways that you could anyway, with the activity that we're going to do later, you could even like take paper cutouts or cutouts from fabric and stick them on a wall. And like that could mean something. And it's like the temporary stuff can still make a big impact.
Right. Because images exist. Again, photography exists. And the installations that are created, those are immortalized in photographs. And it's a real thing.
For sure. Also Instagram, y'all. I ain't gonna lie. How much stuff y'all been sharing this whole time? Like that's just on IG and Facebook. And it's like these little infographics and like, you know, these like images. It's like, you know, people are taking like shots from like the protests and everything so that people can get a wider awareness of like what's actually going on. All that stuff. It's like there's a million ways to do it.
Can be, I think you said this, that Instagram is a way a form of documentary. Like you can document things.
Yes,
And
Tamika Galanis. She speaks to this all the time.
yes.
She's a documentarian among many other hats that she wears. Shout out Tamika. And like, she really, really likes the idea of people, you know, documenting their everyday experience, like on Instagram, as a way for us to have like an archive of Bahamianness, you know? And like, that's also in itself, it's kind of like activist work, because how much like do we have that's like written down about Bahamian history, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, it's a good way to share stuff, for sure. And to make sure that like,
imagine in 100 years, your great grandchildren can like see a complete documentary of your life. Like,
exactly.
That's amazing. So
because,
next time your parents ask you why you're on Instagram, like, I'm documenting my life, mother. This is important.
It's like, right? This is for my memoir. You know, like, everyday people are important. Like,
Absolutely.
the people who we deem to be important today, you know, big figures and stuff, is like, they are everyday people.
Exactly.
That's it. They're just very visible. That's the only difference. Anyway,
it's all good.
Moving on.
Moving on to examples. History. Sorry.
Yes. I'm just giving like a couple little, you know, just 2 examples that might help you sort of widen how you're thinking about stuff. So the first one is old, right? Like, it's like, this is
like your Grammy.
Is a painting, like, way older than your Grammy. This is from 1793, this painting. It's by an artist called, I know it looks different in English, but in French, it's Jacques-Louis David. And the painting is called The Death of Marat. Now, basically, Marat was this murdered French revolutionary leader for the French Revolution, you know, like Marie Antoinette, all that stuff, the monarchy being overthrown, in France. So like, Marat, the guy who's in the image, who's killed, he was essentially a journalist at the time, and he leaned really heavily towards supporting the liberal rebels who were like, you know, working to, like I said earlier, overthrow the monarchy in the late 1700s. And the way that David has painted Marat is in the style that like they would paint old Christian martyrs. So it's like, he's uplifting this man's life, and like, you know, how his death is really significant in the revolution efforts, right? And so in portraying Marat this way, it's like he's making a really political statement about the revolutionary struggle, and he's giving something visually to the public, who were mainly poor people and also really wanted to overthrow the monarchy. He was giving them something that they could relate to and engage with. And the other thing about this painting as well is that it was like put up somewhere that was actually quite public. So when you think about like the late 1700s in France, like, there wasn't really a lot of opportunity for folks to be able, like regular folks, to be able to just go and view artworks, because that was what rich people had, right? For the most part. So like, he made this specifically for the people. And like, another little sidebar is like, a lot of people consider this the first work of modern art, which sounds ironic because it's from the late 1700s. But
it was modern at the time.
Right. In a weird way, it's like, for the sense of like, you know, art and concept and engagement with the public that we have from David's painting, it's like, that is very fitting with like the modern art that we started seeing around like the early 1900s. So it's like, you know, nothing's new under the sun, basically.
Right.
So yeah, we can move on to the next example, which is a little more modern, just a touch.
Y'all, I'm learning with y'all, and I love it.
It's fun, right? It's good. All right. So the Guerrilla Girls, and guerrilla is spelled that way for a very specific reason. So I'm just going to read this sort of slightly edited version of what the Tate Museums in the UK have given as like a really good summary of this group of feminist bad gals that I'm going to share. So the Guerrilla Girls is an anonymous group of feminist women artists devoted to fighting sexism and racism in the art world. The group formed in New York in 1985 with the mission of bringing gender and racial inequalities into better focus within the wider arts community. The group uses something called culture jamming, and basically that means they do like a big mishmash of like all these different things in the form of posters, books, billboards, like the one that you can see on the screen, and public appearances where they usually wear gorilla masks, like actual gorilla, to both highlight and expose discrimination and corruption in the art world. To remain anonymous, they wear gorilla masks, which is a pun on the word guerrilla, which is a kind of grassroots resistance that's used in war. If you think about Che Guevara, it's like kind of related to that. These like small groups that kind of organically form themselves and then become like very organized. It's kind of like that. usually like, you know, associated with like rebels, you know, who we need some good rebels in the world.
Always.
And they use, right? So they wear these gorilla masks, and then they use fake names that refer to, you know, women artists in art history who have passed. So it's like kind of also a way to like, you know, draw attention to women artists who might have been forgotten, because that happens a lot in the art world. It sucks, but people are working on it. So according to like the first gen of Guerrilla Girls, their identities are concealed because the issues matter more than individual identities. They're quoted as saying, mainly we want the focus to be on the issues, not on our personalities or our own work. So that's why stuff like this is kind of dope. So like what these women did, this is like a Met Museum, the Metropolitan Museum in New York. This is like a big billboard for them. And they went around, got all this data for all the paintings that are in the Metropolitan Museum, which is basically a lot of really, really old paintings. And when you think about it, all these old paintings, half of them like are nudes, like the female nude or the nude of like women is like, it's been a part of art history since God knows when. And so they're saying that like, if only less than 5% of the artists who are displaying in the modern art section of the Met Museum are women, but 85% of the subjects in the paintings are nude women, there's a problem, right? So it's like people are only interested in the female body, but they're not interested in the minds and thoughts and talents of women in the museum. And that's what they're trying to draw attention to. And this is a whole huge billboard. And like this image that you see with like the woman laying down is from a really famous old painting. I think it's called La Odalisque. I can't pronounce it very well. And they put one of their gorilla masks on her to make sure that like, you know, everybody know like this is their calling card, right? So it's kind of, you know, I mean, they had a friggin' billboard. So it's like, that's like a huge thing in itself. But, you know, if you have access to that, do it. But you can do murals, you can do all this kind of stuff. And like, they took the data that they got, they took their research, because that's what we do is like we research, and then they made that, you know, they made that part of what they wanted to display to draw attention to this issue around like women in the art world. They're dope and I love them.
I love the tagline, do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum?
Right?
Yeah. Wow.
Exactly. And that's like, you know, from the 80s, things ain't changed that much, unfortunately.
I'm
but
sorry.
I mean, it has changed a bit. No, for real though. And like the thing that I like about them as well is like they make sure that they tie in racial inequalities as well as like, you know, the inequalities of women, because that's what intersectional feminism is like, you know, you suffer for and you get like oppressed for a bunch of different things. You get marginalized for a bunch of different things.
I
your class,
also want
your
to
race,
say,
gender, all that.
Gender, sexual orientation. And I also want to say, if your feminism is not intersectional, it is not feminism. I'm sorry.
Preach.
But moving on.
Preach. Yes, thank you, because Lord knows, facts, big facts. Anyway, sorry. All right, we can get on the next one. Let's do this.
This is so that we have an example of someone working in environmentalism, since the theme is an environmental theme. This is work from Benjamin Von Wong. He is Canadian, with Malaysian Chinese, up to Malaysian Chinese descent. And a lot of his work centers around recycling found objects. And
this is beautiful,
isn't it? And it really, his whole thing is to get people to recycle, and particularly recycle electronic goods. So he's done work with Nikon, Flickr, Huawei, Dell, a lot of the companies that create electronic products, and his work all centers around that. He goes to the companies, create these gorgeous images with volunteer work, and then returns all of the electronics to the company, and then posts them, runs a whole campaign behind the images, gives away free prints of the images for people who sign up to donate or sign up to become a part of the recycling program for these companies. And these companies recycle all of their goods, and electronic products in particular, if they're no good in the landfill, right? Like
there's so much plastic,
and they can all be reused, right? Especially the wiring, especially did you know there's literal gold in your laptop?
Right. When I found that out,
needs to be recycled.
My mind was blown.
Yeah.
Like how much we paying for these things, and it's just like actual gold.
And we're throwing
like
them
diamond
away.
in some things as well, which is like crazy.
Yes, and not disposing of them properly, and it's on other ways. So he's done
it's nonsense.
Across America. He's even done, and it's not just electronics, he's also like broken the world record for like largest straw sculpture, where he like used all reusable disposable straws. So a lot of his work centers around that, around recycling and getting people to recycle and reuse and recycle. And there's a link to his blog if you want more information on him. But he is super cool. I love his work.
I'm also a fan. And like, this is somebody that like Zearier shared with me, because like I didn't know. And that's the point, is like, we can't know everything. Nobody can know everything. And we have to like,
it's impossible.
We have to just encourage like being able to say, oh, I don't know that, or I didn't know that. Let me do some research. You know what I mean? Because like, I think we all get like, especially when it comes to activist work, when you're starting out, you feel like you're supposed to have all the answers to all the questions, because you're being made to answer for really difficult things, right? You're being made to speak for a whole group. And like, there's no way you can know all that stuff like in the beginning. People just need to chill.
Yeah.
You're gonna learn what you learn. You're gonna know what you know, and you're gonna share.
And as long as you remain open and you want to keep learning, like there's no limit. I also want to say, because I think that one of the coolest projects that he did was that he, again, with the Guinness World Book and breaking records, he built the tallest closet in the world.
The tallest closet? Oh my
Made entirely from recycled clothing, clothing people had thrown away, just to 3,000 pieces.
Oh my God.
Just to show how much clothing that we all use in our lifetime. And it's just a lot.
I hope it was rainbow, and also to tell people that they need to come out the closet when it's safe.
That's
you know what I mean?
Funny. Yeah. In their own time, but yes.
Right? In your own time. If it ain't safe, like, everybody understands. But just saying.
Right.
I just love that as an idea. Sorry, that's where my brain was going. Because this is what we do. This is art. It's intuitive. You kind of like make all these linkages to things.
Okay.
So okay, next one. Let's get it. Yay. So this is the artist that we're going to be focusing on for our activity today. Some of you might have heard about her, actually. Her name's Kara Walker. She's an American artist. I think she was born in around 1969. I did have that somewhere in my notes, but I don't have it now. But anyway, she's a contemporary artist. Her dad was a painter and professor, as in like art painter and professor. Her mom was an administrative assistant. She grew up between a fairly multicultural California and then later Georgia, where her dad took up a position at a university, to an area called Stone Mountain, which is a real place. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like a movie place. And at Stone Mountain in Georgia, they were still holding KKK rallies, right? When she was growing up. So at her new high school, it was really different from her experience in like coastal California, where like she felt like things were a bit more, you know, not that there wasn't any racism, but that it just was perhaps not quite so encouraged. Whereas, you know, this place in Georgia that she moved, she was getting a lot of, you know, racial tension. She was also like, she, when she moved to this new high school, she recalled getting called racial slurs at her school. So for me personally, I think this might have influenced her later decision to include racial commentary in her work, because this is something that affects like so many of us, right? Yeah. But what I find interesting, and actually something that I personally really identify with when I was at university, she avoided talking about race in her bachelor's degree, which is at the Atlanta College of Art. So I'm wondering personally if the insecurity around her decision to not engage was like partly due to like what she'd experienced as, you know, in her formative high school years. I know that for me, when I moved to the UK for my art degree, my first degree, my bachelor's, I also wanted to avoid, I was the only person of color on my course, and I was the only like international student on my course, because it was a really small school. And I also kind of just didn't want to talk about the Caribbean and Caribbeanness, Bahamianness, and racial issues, because it just felt, I don't know, I didn't want to be boxed in. So what she states at some point is that like she was worried it would be too quote unquote obvious for her to engage with race on a degree. Kind, it's like part of it is to learn the subject, the other part of it is to learn yourself, right? Because it's supposed to help you with, you know, it's one of the many ways that helps you like kind of inform your sense of identity and who you are as a person. You don't have to go to university, but it's like that's one of the ways that people do, because it's a place to think. So
it's interesting that it wasn't until she went on to her master's degree at Rhode Island School of Design, also known as RISD, that she started to make work about Black history and struggle. And that's what made her really famous is around, I think, 1994, she did this really big panorama that's like similar style as like these Black cutouts that you can see on the screen on a white background. And like it all dealt with, you know, the racial abuse and discrimination that happened in the American South, like, you know, the antebellum South, right? Which is, you know, so she was like doing a lot of research into history, you know, learning more about what is her history as a Black American, right? So I don't know, I just find it really interesting that it's like we kind of don't always think about how these things affect us. We think, and I mean, like we should think about this in our everyday lives, right? It's like, you know, how you speak to people at any stage of your life. You don't know what stays with someone. What might be an offhand comment for you can affect someone for years and years.
Absolutely.
So always go with kindness and tolerance and understanding. Just saying.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Anyway, and also just a random, again, sidebars, because we have so many sidebars now, they make up a main bar. That basically, there's a lot of Bahamian artists who are RISD alumni, just as a fun fact.
Yes, that's also a thing.
So just to name some, John Cox, Dion Benjamin Smith, I think John Beadle was as well, Michael Edwards, Jessica Colebrook, she's a ceramist, by the way, and Anina Major, who's also a ceramist, but like maybe more on the contemporary side, because she also does like video installations and like all kinds of other stuff. But that's just to name a few. There's like probably like another 7, I would say. But so there's like a lot of Bahamians who went to RISD. So yeah, anyway, Kara's both renowned and critiqued for the very charged racial commentary in her work. She's made like, and quite recently, this giant like Sphinx mommy figure. And like, we have to mention that the figure of the mommy, you know, like y'all are seeing stuff now about like Aunt Jemima and how they're changing it, you know, the whole figure of like the Black woman who's bigger bodied and has like a head wrap on. That's the figure of the mommy, right? It's offensive. And so she's made, and it's like usually used to like, you know, degrade and suppress Black women, because it's just relegating them to service rather than telling Black women that they should look after themselves, because they historically have had to look after everybody else. So she made this giant mommy Sphinx out of sugar, I think in like it might be the old Domino sugar factory, but if it's not Domino, I believe it was in an old sugar factory. And so it's like this giant thing for people to contend with. So it's like whether she's doing these big monumental sculptures or the black paper cutouts that she became famous for in the 90s, like they're all pretty kind of cool and important. And so what we're gonna also look at for our activity, I just wanted to give a couple notes. I don't know, is that on another slide? Yeah, let's go to that.
Further research.
Yes, so these are also some links.
And we will upload this PowerPoint, and we'll include the links in the YouTube live and everything. So you'll have these, but
yes,
there we go.
There we go. Perfect. Sorry, I know I was getting ahead of myself there.
No, get ahead.
Thanks. Okay. So this is like a super, super, super simple activity, but it can be really, really impactful, right? So the cutouts that she does are normally inside museums. And, you know, when you think about it, a lot of people are really intimidated about going into an art museum or an art gallery, right? Because like a regular museum, quote unquote, that might be like, you know, old historic objects or like, you know, the natural science museum, stuff like that. Like you feel like you can go in, but because art has been really, really wrapped up in elitism for a really long time, it's hard for people to feel like that's for them. It's hard to feel like you're allowed to cross into that space because historically a lot of us haven't been. So it's great that she's doing this work, but if we're thinking that it's only in museums, and I think this is why she does like, you know, the big public sculptures and stuff with like the one that she did with the big sugar woman Sphinx. So like, if you think about how hard it is to get in a museum, then like what you can do is like try and take that out of the museum. So think of ways that you can take these sculptures out of a museum and into a bunch of different spaces. So it's a really, really simple activity. It literally is like paper cutouts, and you can pick different kinds of paper. You can do like whatever you want. It's about the silhouette. So it's about this outline of a figure. And so when you learn how to make these figures, you can like arrange your own sort of scenes, like in your house.
You could take them and arrange them in a friend's house, because this is the great thing, is because they're portable. All you would need like is like tape. You can stick them up somewhere else and be like a little bit cheeky. You could stick it like on a window, you know, like when nobody's looking, because it's just paper, so it's not defacing anything, but it can make a statement. And if you want to be like,
no, go ahead.
And if you want to be like, you know, put that extra layer of like, okay, well, if I just put these things up, how is it activism? What you could do that would be really cool is to like leave a little QR code with them that links to a website that talks about the things that you're like trying to like activate people towards, right? So it could be something like a website that's about environmental activism, women's rights, LGBT rights, Black Lives Matter, like anything like that, because obviously Black Lives Matter fits with like Kara's subject matter. So just wanted to throw that out there as an idea.
QR codes are what we call ingenious marketing. Those are perfect and they're free to create. So if you want to post something publicly and get attention to a cause, that's the way to do it. You can also put them on cardboard, like design as a backdrop, and then make that, it becomes portable that way as well.
Right. Oh, and you can also think about it like in the sense like John Canoe, you know?
Oh, yes.
Right? Like, because just saying, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Like there's like all these different ways that you can put it into your context, your personal context, your personal subjectivities, I dare say.
Absolutely.
Hey. Driving home the language.
Yay! Okay, so we're going to switch screens now, and we're going to do a demonstration of the activity. And then please, I know we're talking a lot, but feel free to ask questions. We are here to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And we want to see what y'all doing. I want to see these pictures when you're done.
Please share. Please share. NGB2 for hashtag NGB242 hashtag NGB summer program.
Right.
Share your images with us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We are here to see it. And Instagram. We want to see all of it.
Oh, I just had another idea, and I can throw this in while I'm thinking about it. You know the Gorilla Girls image that we just had? Right. You could also do like really cool collages that also include like, you know, data and like important information, like important interpretations of data around like something that you're passionate about. And that could be cool. And you could photocopy that and like leave it up everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I also
but like responsibly, because paper.
Definitely. Recycle paper is also a thing.
Yes.
But I also want to just remind everyone, because it's something that I had to be taught when I first started working in the art world, that art is not just images, like words can be art. You can include art is the mix mash of all the things. So if you want to include some words and if you have something you need to say, put the
even
words
sound.
Yeah, it's all
you could record something,
mixed media,
blast it like through the speakers of a car, do whatever you want.
It's
like,
everything.
It could be anything.
It's all
you could blast Martin Luther King's speech through the speakers of a car going through a particular
You have
neighborhood.
This woman already planning an installation over there. Okay,
right?
So
right?
we're going to switch gears right now. Stay with us, ask questions, post and share, like and subscribe. We're here.
We're gonna do it. All right, thanks y'all.
All right, thanks.
We're good.
Hi,
all right.
So I'm gonna be Natalie's handy dandy assistant today.
Yes, emphasis on the hands. Hey, there we go. Great. So Zearier has very kindly agreed to do this activity for me while I say what the instructions are. So bear with us, guys. We're going to get through this. It's really, really simple.
Should we do supplies
and I'm
first,
sure.
Should we do supplies first, maybe?
Yes, definitely. I'm sure like a lot of people have like done this before, because it's basically just like, you know, sort of tracing and trying to do stuff, but a little bit of a twist. So what we have materials wise is you're gonna need scissors. Thank you, Z. Hey, welcome to our channel, guys. You're gonna need tape.
And it doesn't have to be this fancy blue tape. It can be like any regular tape.
Right. It can be any kind of tape. It's just that you want to make sure that like whatever kind of tape you're using, that it's hopefully not going to rip up the paper too much. A nice trick if you're using tape and you're trying to stick it on paper and stuff is like you take a piece of tape and then you kind of like stick it to a piece of your clothing like a couple times before you stick it on the paper, so that hopefully then it's got like a little bit of fibers and stuff on it and it won't rip up your paper. Just in case you didn't know.
Pro tip.
Right? Pro tip. And you're going to need glue.
I have two.
right? Because Zearier extra prepared.
Always.
Extra. And you're going to need white paper, which you can see. Yes, good. And also the ever important black paper, which you can also see right there. Yes, good. Good. She's extra prepared. There's tons. And then you're going to need pencils. One of them was a little bit rogue and that ran away.
And it
That's
ran
okay.
away.
We got two.
So that's fine.
Why we have more. That's why I have more than one. And and for your pencils, it's actually better to have a slightly dull pencil for this activity.
I'm gonna scotch on this a little bit.
Yes, good plan. Good plan. Just because you don't want to end up ripping the paper. All right. So the first thing that you need to do is layer your piece of black paper underneath the image that you've picked for tracing.
Can I just tell them about my image?
Absolutely.
So I downloaded some images of Equality Bahamas Last Women's Rights March. I volunteer with them. So my
Amazing
QR
people.
code is going to be a link to our webpage. Shameless plug. Okay. So
yes.
These are my images.
Good.
And what am I doing with my
love
images, Natalie?
So you're going to layer that image on top of a piece of the black paper. Yes.
Okay. Oh, should I cut this out first?
You don't even have to cut it out yet.
Oh, okay.
What you need to do is, what you should do anyway, is like try and like get a piece of tape to attach it to the black paper so that it'll stay still while you trace.
Ah, that makes sense. Okay.
Right. So it's like you put it on like either side.
Do our pro tip because the edges should be fine, right? I'm not going to use the edges.
Yes.
Okay.
Because this is painter's tape, the blue tape, and painter's tape is amazing because it's supposed to like peel off of walls and also paper. Really, really easy. It's a really useful thing to keep in your artist toolbox, I have to say.
Right now, I'm just taping my image to the black paper.
Exactly. And you don't have to be too precious about it. Once like, you know, the black paper is behind and like covering the space behind what you want to draw out, like you're good.
So here's what mine looks like now. I have two.
Perfect.
I'm going to put one more here so
just
that it doesn't move because I extra clumsy. Boom. So we have the black paper in the back, our image in the front, and I've taped the image onto the paper.
Yes.
What's next, teacher?
All right. So now, student of mine, you need your dull pencil.
Okay. Boom. So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to use, so we're not wasting paper, and I'm just going to scotch on this a little bit.
Perfect.
To wear the graphite edge down.
Yes. Perfecto. I think that should be good.
Because like Natalie said earlier, we don't want to rip the paper. Great.
No, that should be good. Perfect. So you see them same books that you have on the table?
Yes.
I'm going to need you to use one of those to press on because the thing is you need something that's like a little bit soft to press on because what we're going to use is the indent from when you trace.
So this one isn't that thick, guys, but it helps.
Right.
Okay.
For sure. So if you're looking at your image, Zearier, do you see like sort of how you want to trace this out? Is it going to come out as like a really abstract shape? Is it going to look like people? Like, is there like a hand sticking up or something or a foot that makes people like, you know, makes it visible as people?
I want to go around the edges of the people so you can sort of see us with our signs.
That sounds perfect.
So I should do that?
Yes, that sounds great. So you can rest it flat and then you can start to trace around the outside of your people. And
how hard should I be pressing?
Really hard, like as hard as you can without tearing the paper. Because what you want to do is leave the indent in the piece of black paper so you can cut around that.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it's like, so it's like you're trying to do like a continuous line drawing that's pressing really hard. It gonna work your hands out. I ain't gonna lie, but it helps. It does help. So it's like one way that you could do it. Another way that's a little bit tricky, but it can work pretty well sometimes is if you put chalk or something on the back of the piece of paper of the image that you want to trace out, and then you trace onto it with, hey.
Sorry, guys.
Everybody want to do it. Everybody want to do the activity, man. Zearier, send them away. So basically like, no, I'm only teasing you. So like another way that you could do this is if you have some chalk, you can like rub chalk on the back side of the image and then trace over it. But sometimes like the chalk kind of makes it a little bit hard to see when you trace. And at the end of the day, like what you need to do is make sure you have that sort of like indent so you can see when you're cutting anyway. But just like, you know, so you have like the idea that you can do this like a bunch of different ways, you know? Because just because we say there's one way to do something doesn't mean that you shouldn't experiment and try and find like other ways to make, you know, the stuff happen. Like the only way that you figure stuff out is by trying different things. And like part of that, you know, knowing your material is really important, and you can't really do that unless you're like, you know, spending time with it and,
I just find
you
it
know,
funny.
thinking.
Sorry, how this is up top here, and I'm literally barreling into this. Like you can see
Yes,
even onto this.
good.
So you guys, that was really good advice from Natalie. Do use something to press on because it will come through the paper because you're pressing
Yes.
really, really hard.
That's good, because that's what we need. Brilliant. And that's the thing is like once there's something a little soft behind, but make sure it's not like, you know, like a family photo album or something, because you don't want like your mommy to get mad.
Yeah.
Just make sure it's like an old notebook or an old
Don't
magazine.
upset mommy.
No, because we love your mummies. And your pa, you know, your pa too. He good. He cool.
All of them.
All of them. All your family members.
You were right. Like, I feel like my hand is working out for real.
Right. It's funny because like that's
what's this muscle here? Y'all work all of this muscle right here out.
It's funny because you feel it in like your base of your thumb and in your forearm a little bit, I think, usually. And it's like that's the interesting thing as well, is like, you know, for any skill that you have, like you build up you know, not just like the muscles for it. Like, you know, if you're an archer, you might have like, you know, certain like your tricep might be a bit more defined because you're having to pull back on like the bow and stuff, right? But then it's also like, you know, you're also, when you think about it, you're also developing like neural pathways in your brain to these things, right? So it's like why certain people are just kind of brilliant at certain things. It's like they built up the muscle memory and like, you know, the actual like brain pathway for things to happen. It's why like so many teachers are really good at remembering people's names, because they have to remember like a school full of children's names, which is wild.
Always do. Yep.
And taxi drivers, in terms of like, you know, routes that you would take, like maps and stuff, like they're really good at remembering that because that part of their brain gets worked out all the time. So it's just, you know, it's just interesting things when you think about it, like, you know, the way that what we do shapes us.
Can we see this?
Let me see. If you bring it a little closer and maybe tilt it, let me see. Oh snap! Yeah, I can see it.
So the back of the paper has the outline. It's coming up.
Yay! Oh, that's great. That's great. I love. Oh, and also just for the end of it, we've got a link to a website where you can like, you know, plug in your QR code, like URLs and info, and like generate one if you want to stick it on something after. So like, don't stress about that part. We're just trying to get the silhouettes done.
We can show you how to do that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
It's what we're here for.
Yeah, babe. We got this. And it's like, there's something that I think that's really satisfying about, you know, trying to trace over something. It's kind of like those mindfulness coloring books and stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It is pretty relaxing, actually, now that I'm doing it.
Right. It's weird, right? It's like, it's therapeutic. It's something that just like is kind of easy to take time with. And then when you're cutting out with the scissors, it should feel kind of similar too. There's like this satisfaction in like making the thing kind of like, you know, shape itself and just taking that.
It's meditative. It's almost as if it's already outlined and you're just cutting on a traced line. Oh, that sounds, I'm excited for that.
Right? This is what you end up living for when you're like nearly 30, guys. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not really kidding. It's really enjoyable. I don't know why. Like, it's just also like, you know, making time for yourself, which is important. It's important to start that as soon as possible.
And I'm going to say, because I taught for a while at a high achieving school, especially students who are taking exams and they get really caught up with exam prep and coursework and everything you guys have going on. Like just taking a moment to do something for you, like creating something like this, it resets you, it refocuses you, and study has shown that when you are exercising your creative skills in your creative mind, your the other cognitive abilities also get to shine as well. So
facts.
Taking a minute to just do this.
It's like the thing to sharpen a knife.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like creativity is such a big part of like being in the world, even though like people seem to forget it. It's like, you know, you have to be creative at problem solving, which is what we've done with like, you know, what materials do we use for this thing? Means you've also done it because it's just like, how do we do this when Natalie's on another island? You have
and
to
we
find like
figure it
different
out.
ways. Exactly. You have to encourage your brain to kind of think of all these different ways to do like, you know, the same thing. Creative thinking is really important. That's why a lot of the time, like people who do like creative degrees or traditionally creative degrees, like there's a weird amount of like transferable skills that you have if you move into other like areas of work. So
It's
like, you
a
know,
lot,
an art degree
yeah.
isn't useless. You kind of just have to like, you learn a bunch of different things. So it's like, you
I
can
mean,
slot that into different places.
besides the tons of different careers that you can take up in the arts,
Mm-hmm.
taking art, especially in high school, it also just helps you do so many other things.
It does. It really does. Like any kind of art, like whatever it is. And then the funny thing is as well is like, there's also, I think certain sciences that people don't think of as being creative, but they're really creative, like physics, especially when people start getting into like abstract physics and stuff. It's like, that's actually creative. Like you have to be absolutely bonkers to try and like imagine what the universe is like through math. Like it's kind of wild. It's wild and it's extremely creative. Like there's a friend of mine who did her degree in physics, and she said that like she went to like a science college, right? And like a science-based college within a wider university. And she was saying that that physicists are viewed as like the artists of the science world for that reason.
Oh wow, I actually never heard that before. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. It's really like funny because like they basically just got like called like the, like, you know, the wild ones, the weirdos, the people who are like thinking like outside the box in a very different way. Yeah. And then like engineers as well, as like, you know, there are rules to the way that like machines work and things work in the world, but like that doesn't mean that you're not encouraged to creatively think about how to make these things work better, how to make them work differently, because like the world wouldn't get to where we are now if it weren't for creative thinkers.
Definitely.
So whatever your you know, your career path is, it's like don't let your creativity suffer in it, because that's the thing that's going to keep you. All right, Zearier, you got this?
Oh my God, I do. My fingers are hurting, and I have 2 more people to trace.
Okay,
so
you got this. You got this.
There.
You could take a break. You could stretch your hand.
And what is helping me is turning it around every so often to see the outline that it's creating, and that's very inspiring, y'all.
Yes, good. And then you can see exactly like what it's going to be. I'm here for it. This is great. Oh, Zearier got all the friends coming.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. I think it's lovely. It's a working space, y'all. It's a working space. Yeah, like there's other people doing a million things while we're doing this.
And there are other videos being recorded. Like there are other things going on.
Yes. It's because me and my situation was just like, okay, we need to pre-record this. We're going to get this. It's going to be great. But we're still going to be here for you live, as you can tell.
Yes, and I'll still be here. Take questions.
Because we got you. It's all good. Oh, I wish I was doing this now.
Okay, guys. So can we see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, perfect. I can see it.
This is my outline.
That's awesome. It also looks like a great abstract shape, but like you can see that there's like people's heads and stuff, which is really fun.
I like it. Great. Okay.
Great.
What's next?
What I need you to do next is to take the tape off really gently.
Okay. Oh, that was easy.
Yay. Painter's tape, man. It's the stuff of genius. I love it.
So the image is on the side, and which paper am I holding now? This one?
Yes, the black one. Let's have a look. All right, if you hold it a little closer. Oh yeah. Oh, that came out good. Ooh. Oh my God, I see like the signs.
That's awesome. Right. Okay.
That's perfect. And I see feet.
Feet. Yes. Okay.
Great. So what you're gonna need now is your scissors, and you're gonna cut that out.
Boom. So I'm cutting now. Y'all, I'm gonna have to do this over because I always suck at cutting. But let's see what happens.
And this is the part that's gonna get more tricky, because like scissor handling for this is really difficult. Some people find it easier with bigger scissors. Some people find it easier with small scissors. If you find this is something that you're really, really into, like you can use what's called an X-Acto blade. And like you might have seen people use it for like collaging and stuff, but it's a really great little tool. And all you would need is like that and like maybe a piece of wood to press on, or if you want to be real fancy, you could get a cutting mat. So like if collage and these kind of cutouts are like a practice that you're really interested in, it's like it's worth investing in those tools if you can. And X-Acto blades are pretty cheap. You can get them like right by like Book World and like a bunch of different places on the island. And if you can't get a cutting mat, a piece of lino, like an old piece of like, you know, lino tile, or a smooth block of wood, like stuff like that could be, fine. Like an old cutting board actually as well, like in the kitchen. If you have like a really old one that's like not being used anymore, or your mom says she wants to, or dad says that they want to get like a new one, then like, that could work too until like you finally get like a thingy one. But like I say lino is probably the best. You just need something that's a little bit like rubbery and a little bit plasticky, but there's like a bunch of different ways, a bunch. So how's that going so far, Zearier? Is it okay?
I have not failed yet, so
exactly. And it wouldn't be a failure, Zearier. It would be a lesson.
You're right. It's only lessons in this life.
Exactly. And like the only way that we can like figure stuff out is by trying and having things work and not work.
Right.
That's
and
like,
honestly, some of the most beautiful works of art can be created when you do something that you didn't expect to do. So if things don't go exactly as planned, then that's fine. Make it a part of the piece.
Exactly. Actually, one of my old lecturers made this statement that seemed really controversial to us at the time, but it made a lot of sense. And they said that boredom is really important for creativity. And what they meant by that was like, you have to like kind of just sit in your studio and mess around with stuff like in this aimless fashion sometimes, or it seems aimless, so that you can like figure out how the thing works and figure out something new. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's good to go into something without all these like preconceived ideas of what you want to do and just mess around with like the material, because that's how you get to know it. Okay, great. So all right, Z, let's see how your edge is looking so far.
So far,
if you don't
this
mind.
is what it looks like.
Oh, yes. Oh, that looks good, girl.
Yeah, it's slow coming.
Yeah, no, it does take a while. But again, it's like, what I find actually really nice with stuff like this is, let's make our process match our ideals or like our goals for like this kind of project. So if you're doing something like this, what would be really useful is to like also listen to a podcast that's like based on, learning more about whatever your cause is, right? Because when you're doing stuff like this, it's really, really, how like there's those studies that have come out that it's basically saying that like doodling helps you to retain information when you're like listening to something.
Right.
So this is kind of like that. It's like, you're doing this action that's like quite therapeutic, and it's something that you can think about but not think about too hard. It makes it really, really good for when you're trying to take in information, like whether you're studying, whether you're trying to learn something new. Like if you could just listen to something, it's really, really helpful. Like you'd be surprised. Like it kind of blew my mind, because I'm the kind of person where it's like I have to write out like lists and try and like regurgitate stuff from memory to be able to like retain stuff. But like when I started doing things like this, it really, really helped me to like just learn more about subjects and to let your mind like kind of rove over and wander around the information that's like being given to you, like it helps you to like be able to have the space to like ask questions while you're listening to something. It's really, really helpful for like the way that your brain processes, and it makes it easier for your brain to be able to kind of multitask and take in two sets of information at once as well.
Again,
which is really helpful for thinking.
Yeah.
Train the brain. That's our tagline for this activity. I also really actually quite like the way that the negative space is like coming out, like the bit that you're cutting it out of.
I like it.
You could use that for something too. See, that's the thing though, is like you don't really think about that unless you're doing the activity, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really lovely. And you could use that for something else, like a collage later on that's got like some other stuff going on it.
We can use every piece of this, and you can use every piece of your artwork as you create too. So nothing goes to waste.
Oh, this is great. Zearier, you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
for the encouragement. And I'm sure everyone at home, y'all are doing great jobs as well.
Oh, for sure. I have zero doubts. Zero.
This is
lovely.
I was gonna say nunca, but then I remembered that means never and not zero.
Never doubts.
I took Spanish. I took Spanish for like 6 years, and I know nunca.
All of us. There you go. Maybe you could listen to a Spanish podcast while you're like doing this. You'd be surprised what you pick up on. It's kind of like, like the like immersion theory or whatever, where like, you know, the more you're like listening to a language and submersed in it, the more you like get to learn it.
Right.
This could be a good way to kind of like engage with stuff like that too, because it's hard to just sit and listen to something that you don't understand, but like the more you kind of like just, you know, have like other stuff to kind of occupy you while you're doing things, like you'd be surprised what embeds itself in your subconscious. That's why it's important to know what we're taking in, guys.
Always.
Oh, look at that. It's also nice because it's like it's not too windy, so you don't have like this whole flag going on.
Oh yeah, and it's not as hot outside as I thought it was gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
So we're outside at the gallery. I know.
Yay.
The good kind.
Mm-hmm.
We're outside at the gallery on the back porch, and the wind is going, and the birds are chirping, and the garden looks beautiful. So my view is lovely. I mean, maybe you guys can share in the comments where you are right now, where you're working. Working in nature is really
I'd love
fun.
That'd be lovely.
But if you're indoors, that's fine as well. Though AC is needed sometimes. It's hot.
And these summers are getting hotter. That's why this is our whole theme, right? The whole planet Earth, sustainability.
Exactly.
You know, look
and
after.
It's a very much needed conversation.
It is. Because like, you know, look after the planet, which is our house, and look after ourselves. And then we got this and we good. Oh, marvelous. This is looking great. It's also kind of nice to experiment with different types of paper after as well, like different thicknesses, because all paper is not created equal, y'all.
Y'all's
like,
not. Really not.
It's really funny, but like, you know, the difference like in sort of like the texture of the paper, like how rough it is, like on the surface, how thick it is, how like, oh my God, even like tracing paper and stuff is like really interesting to work with sometimes. I like to work with tracing paper a lot. Because it's really light and airy, but it's a really hard material to work with because it's so like,
I was going to say that. So if you guys would give yourself a challenge, the tracing paper would be there to give you a challenge and add an extra dimension to your work.
Yes. And it's interesting because you could have this like cutout shape that's in tracing paper and you could place it over like another image as a way to kind of like make like a little ghost on something if you want to like talk about absence and presence and like all these different things. There's just a bunch of different ways like, you know, the material can kind of make a conversation like in the piece. So, you know, that's what I say, and get experimenting, get different stuff, even like you know, actually especially I would say like, you know, found materials, like old, like my mom's the geography teacher, so when I was on my degree I used to do a bunch of stuff with like old OS maps of the Bahamas, the same ones that we use for like GGYA navigating and for like our geography lessons and stuff. So like, you know, just think about what you have available to you. Like, what is it that, you know, what jobs do your family do that might use different kinds of paper? Like John Cox, the artist, he uses old, like, what's the, like architectural drafts that his father made and like within his artwork. Like, and he'll like paste that onto canvases and like pieces of wood and paint over it. And it's just like, it's an interesting way for him to like reference like his family history. So it's like, you could also like cut out like, you know, these shapes into like paper that kind of would mean something more to your family. Obviously not something that's like, you know, valuable.
Yeah.
Like, don't get your birth certificate because like, that would make no sense. But like, you know, what we're saying though is like, you know, try and find things that have meaning to you, even though they seem commonplace to like other people. Right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, just as you said, you can also make copies of these things that are maybe valuable, like copy the birth certificate and use it.
Right.
Because a birth certificate is, like you said, things that are commonplace for other people. Some people get up birth certificates because they're stateless individuals, you know? So, I mean, something that's simple can be, you know, quite powerful, I think.
I think that's a brilliant idea, especially for like considering the way that there's so much xenophobia towards undocumented folks here.
Exactly.
That would be a great one to go for. That would be a really, really good one. Or like scans of like, you know, the like front of your passport, not like your actual passport information.
Please do not destroy your actual document. I know, right?
No.
And there's an artist, like, oh my God, who is it? Susan Moore McKay, who did a copy of a passport photo and then like edit it where you can hardly tell. So, you know, her actual identity isn't at stake, but like there are ways to work with it.
Yes. And it's just, you got to be really clever and do a lot of research so that you don't get yourself in trouble.
Yes.
And that's the whole point, is like, this is supposed to be a process that like, you know, you use to like inform yourself you know, like that you use to like learn more about your place in the world and other people's place in the world and the sort of hand that we get dealt, you know?
Yeah.
Which is basically like, it's a lottery. It's like when you're born, it's a lottery, like as to where you're going to end up half the time.
Exactly.
And that's why we have to like, you know, do all the work to sort of get people's awareness to like, you know, understand that some people just aren't as fortunate as you, and that privilege, you know, needs to be used wisely to help uplift other people. If you do well in something, you should pay it forward to people, you know?
That is always a rule. Bam. Take
Bam! Look at that. Oh my God, that's gorgeous.
I
can see the
love
feet.
this. Oh my gosh,
It
the
looks
little
really good.
beads. Yeah,
I know.
I'm
And
really
it's great
happy.
because like, if you look at that from far away, it would look like a little city skyline.
All
right?
right.
A little bit. And then
See,
like, look at
so you can see
okay,
it.
this is perfect. Like you can see those people on like the right-hand side. That's great. So it's like you get that little bit of information, makes you understand that what you're seeing is a crowd of people with signs. And obviously that's all over the news right now. So this is perfect for what we need. This is very Black Lives Matter.
And you can cut on as many of these as you need for your piece, right? Like I did one, but like, and you can include like Cara, like we talked about Cara Walker earlier, like hers has different cutouts next to each other. So you can take this, get something else that would mean something else, and create a whole world around that on
like
that
a panorama, like a whole big scene.
It's just gorgeous.
It is.
I like it.
I love this. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so you want to put this on, you could put this a million different places, but for like our activity, what we're going to do is glue on the back of it to stick it down on this piece of white paper so we can like carry it around with us. But other things that you could do is like you could literally just stick like a little bit of tape on the back. You could stick it in like a window. You could stick it all over the place, like with a QR code. You could like, you know, you could make it a bunch of different ways and just try and like find all the places where you could put this, where you would want people to like, you know, get more of an awareness for things. So it's like, let's say you want to talk about, you know, the human rights of undocumented folks. You might want to like have like a bunch of like little copies of these that you could leave like in a place where, you know, a lot of people frequent. Like I remembered seeing like flyers and stuff in KFC during the gender equality referendum. And I was like, that's genius. It wasn't the kind of flyers I agreed with, unfortunately, but but it was like really, really interesting to see like how people understand like where they need to target, like where do people go where you would have the most visibility for like your project, you know?
Definitely.
So yeah, all you'd need to do, Zearier, is like one little strip of one little squeeze of glue on the back, stick that down.
Okay, so I have put mine in the center of my paper because what I want to do is add things around it. And so around this, what I'm going to do is add maybe the feminist symbol, my fighting fist on one side. So this is going to become an entire landscape of Black cutouts.
I love
using the same method that Natalie just showed us. So I'm going to, again, tape my image to the Black paper, trace it, cut it, and glue it.
That's perfect. I love.
Okay, so we want to show you guys how to do a QR code. I'm going to do one to add to my finished piece. So this becomes my portable mural.
Right.
Yeah. So
and what you do need is like access to a printer, obviously. I think probably just try to get it printed out if you can.
Yes. And your public libraries are open.
That's true. That's very true.
They are always, they're free for students and they want you to come in. So
oh my God, that's perfect. Thank you so much, C. I didn't even realize, I didn't think of that. That's perfect.
So what we're using an online QR code generator,
You'll have the link.
code-generator.com. And again, the link is in the description of the YouTube video. And you can use any other generator you want. Just Google QR code generators.
Yes.
So I opened the generator tab, and what I want to do is link our Facebook page to this piece. So I went to
for Equality
Facebook
Bahamas.
Page for Equality Bahamas.
Sweet.
So I went to our page so that I can get the link, and so I'm clicking there.
That's perfect. And you see the image that you used too.
Yes, I'm going to click copy, and I'm going to go back to the QR code generator, and I'm gonna right click and paste.
You know what's even great about the image that you use, the fact that it's on like the cover photo for Equality Bahamas, is that like people are going to see your cutout, right? And then when they link through from the QR code to the website, they'll recognize like those shapes.
That they're in the right place. Yes.
Right, exactly, which is
amazing.
Lovely. That is really lovely. I like it. It's like a good way to let people know they've arrived at the right place.
I love it. Okay, so then I'm going to click download.
Yes. And then you want to save it. Let's see. No, we don't want to hang out with you on social media, guys.
I'm going to click download.
And you could save it as like a PNG. That's usually like a pretty small file. It's not too like difficult.
Right. Okay. So
to like use.
A bit tricky. So you're gonna think you need to press something because they want you to join them on social media, but we don't do that. You're looking for this. This says QR code being generated, and it will pop up automatically and ask you where to save it. And so I'm gonna save mine to my desktop. I'm gonna name it EB for Equality Bahamas QR code. And I'm going to save it to my desktop as a PNG. They also give you an option to use a JPEG. But I'm going to save
either one's fine.
PNG.
Yeah, I like PNGs.
And then
what's it stand for again? Portable Network Graphic. I think that's what
think so.
Yeah.
And so now I have a QR code that leads to my thing. I'm just going to press print on this.
Yeah. Perfect. Look how easy that
I'm
is.
done.
Fabulous.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed the activity. And yeah.
Yeah, so we want to see your work. Make sure you share with us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter.
And use these hashtags.
Right there.
Somewhere up in
here.
Right. Thank you.
See you later.
Anyway, bye, guys.